Hello everyone, this is Cobalt. This is the next video in my character analysis series for Brawlhalla. Stick around till the end to hear about entering the giveaway to win community colors, emotes, weapon skins, sidekicks, avatars, or even the battle pass, and voting for the next legends. And if you want to skip all this and get straight into the information, there's a timestamp in the description, and don't forget to subscribe so you can keep up with the release of your favorite legend. In these analyses, I wanted to focus solely on the character's signatures. Light attack combos are covered much more in depth than I ever could elsewhere and function pseudo-comparably for all characters of that weapon class. So I'm not going to be discussing the general neutral of the character with their weapons unless it pertains in some way to their signatures. Firstly, I want to give clear descriptions of the terminology I'll be using. Startup frames are the amount of frames that happen after a move has begun until the first hitbox of the move becomes active. Active frames are the duration of frames that the move contains hitboxes that can collide with your opponent. FAF, or First Actionable Frame, is the first frame available where your character is able to move again after the move has been started. For all of this data, I use the character's jump to display the first actionable frame. Lastly, On Miss refers to the move not connecting with an opponent, and On Hit refers to the move making contact with an opponent. I'm going to be doing my analysis today on the next voted in legend, Azoth. He was a ruler of a large empire during his time among the living. However, 1,000 years after his death he was resurrected, revitalizing his empire as a lich, and had waged war with the Heroes of Light until his defeat. Upon his defeat, he was summoned to Valhalla by the Valkyries, and this process repeats. He's summoned back to the world of the living and then returned back to Valhalla. Azoth's weapons are axe and bow, both of which are decent in the competitive metagame right now. He's seen some competitive results, but he's certainly not a staple of the competitive scene. He has an okay stat distribution, slightly above average attack and defense with okay dexterity and a middling speed. Guess that kinda makes sense though for a skeleton, I suppose. But he is geared to be a little hard-hitting and a little slower. So, is it his stats that are holding him back? Or do his signatures have some impact on his somewhat lackluster competitive representation? Well, let's find out. Let's start with his bow. Bow's side sig has 26 frames of startup, active frames from 27 to 49 with an FAF of 57. It functions the same on miss as it does on hit. Azoth fires an arrow at the ground a little distance away from him, and then some spirits or demon-like things come up from where the arrow hit. It's worth noting that this move doesn't connect with opponents that are immediately in front of Azoth, so this move needs to be spaced properly to ensure that you make contact. It has quite a bit of startup, but given that the move hits from farther away, this makes a little bit of sense due to travel distance. And it has about average FAF. This move has potential to cover ledges pretty well due to the lingering hitboxes and disjoint from Azoth, and can punish poorly spaced moves from the opponents as well while maintaining a distance and stage position. Bow Insig has 19 frames of startup, active frames from 20 to 27 and 36 to 43 with an FAF of 60. It functions the same on miss as it does on hit. Azoth fires a large arrow upward at roughly the same angle as neutral light, and it's followed by a second arrow fired at the same angle behind him by a summoned spirit. It essentially doubles its attack and has a pretty good option coverage and range. The startup is decent, the active frames aren't bad, though it's a little lacking in the end-lag department. However, there aren't many other SIGs as good at covering opponents above you as this one, so this SIG has a lot of utility and can catch opponents really well if jumping or landing, and is also able to catch panicking air dodges thanks to the second arrow after the first. This is a pretty solid SIG, honestly. Bow Down SIG has 20 frames of startup, active frames from 21 to 22, and 26 to 40 with an FAF of 50. It functions the same on miss as it does on hit. This is a passive SIG, coupling both evasion with offensive movement. Azoth jumps backwards slightly before firing an arrow forward at his opponent. This move has okay startup for a passive SIG since the backward momentum takes some time, and as with all passive SIGs, if you dash and then initiate it, your backwards momentum is ignored and you proceed straight into the forward shot. It has average FAF and a decent coverage in front of him that is comparable in distance to side SIG, albeit with a few less active frames. Next up is his axe. Axe side sig has 28 frames of startup, active frames from 29 to 32 with an FAF of 52. It functions the same on miss as it does on hit. Azoth jumps backward very slightly before charging forward with a large swing of his axe. This move has quite a bit of startup and a very specific range. It doesn't have hitboxes until Azoth has moved forward quite a bit, and unlike his bow side sig, Azoth moves forward, so during the startup of this move there's a chance that you could be hit out of it. It has okay FAF, but only 4 active frames. It can serve as a good punish option on unsuspecting opponents thanks to its range, and due to its range and travel distance, may be useful as an occasional burst option. Axe Ensig has 15 frames of startup, active frames from 16 to 25 with an FAF of 58. It functions the same on miss as it does on hit. Azoth swings his axe upward after dragging it along the ground briefly. It yields hitboxes going all the way from the ground upwards into the swing, where Azoth jumps upwards slightly as the swing ascends. This SIG has pretty low startup, has reasonable active frames, and amazing utility thanks to its dual coverage by hitting opponents directly in front of him as well as above, which can catch jumping opponents as well as those recovering high. This move doesn't have the best FAF, but it's got a really good startup and utility, so it's honestly one of the better SIGs on his kit in my opinion. Axe Down SIG has 16 frames of startup, active frames from 17 to 32 with an FAF of 48. It functions differently on miss than it does on hit. Should the move connect, it converts into a second hit with active frames from 70 to 25 and 34 to 40 with a new FAF of 73. Azoth summons 3 spirits in front of him, which go from further away to up close. If the move connects with the opponent, it converts into a second hit where Azoth swings his axe upward in a similar fashion to his neutral signature. This move has solid coverage thanks to its range and lingering hitboxes in a comparable way to Yumiko's down sigs. Azoth, however, has to wait for the hitboxes to end before he's able to move again. The signature is really good for guarding ledge since you can extend the hitboxes over it, and it has pretty low startup and FAF. Honestly, I think the sig is a solid one on his kit as well. So overall, his sigs are okay in terms of their frame data. Nothing amazing, but not terrible. Axe neutral sig I think is probably his best sig in both in terms of frame data and utility, and some of his others have okay frame data as well. I don't think that his sigs have a huge amount of utility on his kit given his weapons, knockout potential, and combo viability, though I think his neutral sig on both bow and axe are pretty good. They offer really good coverage and reasonable frame data. His side and down sigs kind of offer him the same coverage on both weapons, and despite their animations looking really nice, I think that they're just okay. Actually, I think Axe down sig is pretty good. It has low startup and good coverage at ledge, and can catch opponents approaching from a distance. I think his sigs aren't bad, but they don't offer him a lot of utility in many regards, and don't have an amazing amount of synergy with his kit, especially whenever compared with bow legends like Diana. Today's code to put down in the comments is Lich King, along with your Twitter handle, and if you get that reference, I appreciate it. Tune in tomorrow for coverage on the next highest voted legend for this week. Comment to vote for your next favorite legend. I'll be continuing this once a day, Monday through Friday, over the next 10 weeks until all 50 legends are covered. So thanks for joining me on this ride. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the release of your favorite legend, and hope to see you back for the next one. Once again, I'm Cobalt, and thanks for watching.